Sides is in my studio. Hellhound on His Trail, The Stalking of Martin Luther King Jr. and the International Hunt for His Assassin is the book. I give it a major thumbs up. Hampton, right after King has been assassinated, you write the following. In the parking lot, concerned onlookers parted for the stretcher as it jaunced over the asphalt. Georgia Davis, her eyes brimming with tears, threaded her way through the small crowd. She stood transfixed as the medics threw open the twin doors and eased King into the ambulance. Abernathy climbed in the back and crouched at King's side. On instinct, Davis followed Abernathy's lead and started to get into the ambulance, eager to be with her lover. But Andy Young touched her shoulder and said softly, "Georgia, I don't think you want to do that." Who is Georgia Davis?
Well, Georgia Davis was one of King's mistresses, and she was the first black state senator of Kentucky, and was a colleague of King's in the movement. It's not very well known that she had come to the Lorraine the night before and was with him the last night of his life. She's still alive. She's written a book. She's actually a very delightful lady, and I interviewed her, and she talked about that instinct of hers to just be there with him and get in that ambulance, and then she realized that this was just not a smart move on her part. But it's certainly one of the more awkward and uncomfortable aspects of this story that King had. He had a number of mistresses and in different cities, and his marriage with Coretta was not strong at that point. It was certainly crumbling in some ways. But that is part of the story.
And she's part of the entourage that then go to the King residence and grieves with Coretta.
Yes.
Says, "I'm sorry."
Mm-hmm. She apologizes to Coretta.
And tells you in her interview that she was apologizing, saying she was sorry not just for the passing of Dr. King, but also in some respect for the relationship she'd had with him.
Yes, yes.
Speaking of awkward moments, here's something else that I knew a little bit about, but like the subject matter of your book, I didn't appreciate just how much I didn't understand. The Jesse Jackson business. What exactly are the facts relative to Jesse Jackson's proximity to King at the time that he shot and how he then comported himself?
Well, he was down below in the parking lot of the Lorraine with a large group of guys who were all going to go to have a dinner at a local minister's house. And after the shot rang out, it's not exactly clear what Jesse Jackson did immediately. Some people said he was crouching behind a car. I think a lot of people thought there was going to be multiple shots. They thought this was just one shot among many. But shortly after King is removed from the scene, taken to the hospital, Jesse Jackson stands before the cameras and begins to kind of spin this story that he got into a lot of trouble with afterwards, because he said, "I was holding King in my arms. I was cradling his head. He died in my arms. His last words were spoken to me. And then, the blood on my shirt," which he seems to have gotten the blood on his shirt by just dipping his hands in the blood, he said the blood was from holding King in his arms. So this is a small fiction that he spun into a larger fiction the next day when he appeared on the Today Show with a bloody shirt and saying that, essentially the Messiah had died in his arms. And I think the inference being, that the mantle of leadership would pass to him. He was only 25 at the time. I think he kind of expected to be the next leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
He was confronted about an interview that he did while he was still in the proximity of the Lorraine on the day that King was shot, by someone in the inner circle who said, I'm paraphrasing, but Jesse, that's not the way that it happened.
Right.
And then Jackson leaves the group and goes to Chicago, which is where a day later he's on the Today Show. And as you point out, the Today Show was blaring from several rooms at the Lorraine, and some of King's entourage who saw Jackson's interview found the spectacle repugnant. In other words, the party is still at the hotel where King got shot. Jackson's now back in Chicago doing the Today Show, and they're watching his representation, and they're saying, to quote, you say, James Bevel, to prostitute and lie about the crucifixion of a prophet within a race for the sake of one's self-aggrandizement is the most gruesome crime a man can commit.
Well, he got into a heck of a lot of trouble with the inner circle. They couldn't believe what he was doing, and they were there. They remember what happened. Abernathy was the guy up on the balcony. If anyone was at King's side in the blood and all of that, it was Abernathy. But no one was cradling his head. I mean, this guy just got shot in the neck. You could cause further harm. I mean, no one's going to hold this man in his arms in the way that Jackson described it. So yeah, it was shocking and showed a side of Jackson, that I think continued throughout his political career.
We have 2 minutes left. Hampton Sides is my guest. Hellhound on His Trail is the extraordinary book. You've spent years of your life researching this subject. You've read all the available material. You've conducted first-person interviews. Any doubt in your mind as to James Earl Ray having killed King and acted alone?
No doubt to the first part. He killed King. He pulled the trigger. I do think he had some help. I do think that there was a crude conspiracy. All along his trail, you hear stories about,
bounties.
He's meeting someone. He may have known about bounties. He certainly, his brothers are constantly, hovering in the background of the story. When he buys a gun in Birmingham, he takes it back and says, my brother said I got the wrong gun. We're going hunting and we need a bigger gun. So he gets a 30-06 instead. So, conspiracy, we're trained, I think, now to think conspiracy means thousands of people, shadowy, esoteric arms of the government, when in fact it's just a handful of people who helped him along the way, maybe gave him some money, maybe shielded his movements in some way.
Do you think that those individuals played a role in his prison break?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
In the bread truck?
We haven't mentioned that, when he killed King, he had been on the lam for about a year, having escaped from a maximum security prison
in a bread truck
in Missouri, in a bread truck, which was a fairly ingenious escape. He had to have had at least a little bit of help. And the person who visited him in prison the day before he escaped was none other than John Larry Ray, his brother. And so again, for maybe a dozen or maybe 15 times throughout this criminal fugitive travels of his, we hear about one of his brothers. So I do think that they were involved in some way.
Bottom line, he killed King. He may have had some rudimentary assistance along the way.
Mm-hmm. And I think he probably expected to connect with one of these bounties. And that's one of the shocking things in the book, is the number of bounties that have been raised on King's head. A lot of people wanted him dead, and a lot of these sort of Southern businessmen associations had raised bounties, and it was public knowledge.
The book is great. Hampton Sides is the author. It's called Hellhound on His Trail. Congratulations. I thoroughly enjoyed, doesn't seem like the right word given the subject matter, but I learned a tremendous amount by reading your book.
Well, I appreciate it. And, I grew up in Memphis, and this is the story that I wanted to tell. This is the most tragic thing that ever happened in my hometown.
You told it well. 7:30 tonight at the Free Library if you're in Philly.